Many of us have been puzzled by the lack of a tapered head tube Mongoose given all the Schwinn bikes that we've seen in the last year and a half, but the wait is no more. Mongoose stepping it up and doing so big time with the new Ardor. Technically that's a shortened name. The full name is the Mongoose Ardor X1. This is a bike with a 17-inch alloy frame and it's built around big tires. Think 27.5 versions of the Schwinn Axum tires. And even the trail ride with these tires somewhat like the Axum. I'll go over that in just a minute, but I want to mention this bike fits in a void that has existed even since the new Schwinn, so let's go over the components and you'll see what I mean. Starting with these Mongoose oversized bars. Now technically the oversized means the 31.8mm diameter, but I noticed these are slightly wider. The bars have been creeping up on some of these new big box bikes, these up to around 735mm, which could be rounded up to 740. Now I don't know if that's manufacturing variants or if that's planned, but they are wider. And look at this stem. I measured this at 35mm. This is an alloy stem and this is totally in my zone. And check out this stack. This is practically slammed. A bold choice. The grips, standard Mongoose. We've seen these for years, the honeycomb design. I think these are the same grips I saw on the XR Pro 4 or 5 years ago. Alloy brake levers for the mechanical disc brakes and the lone shifter, a tip-off for the Pro Rush 7-speed. Now we casually mention trigger shifter, so much progress in big box bikedom. Progress like the tapered head tube, which is finally on a Walmart Mongoose, zero stack for an internal tapered fork, of course the factory fork, a straight steerer, and it has 100mm of suspension travel. This is basically a 27.5 version of the Schwinn Boundaries updated fork from last year. This one though branded Element. The front wheel quick release, the rims double wall alloy, also Element branded. Tires 27.5 by 2.60, very Axum-esque as I've already mentioned, in a 27.5 kind of way. New branding on these tires though, Compass, very nicely done, it looks good at the very least. Kicking off the drivetrain, Mongoose branding for the polymer pedals, and those are mated to 170mm Pro Wheel cranks. And this crankset, another finally, meaning finally a 1x with a 30-tooth chainring on a Mongoose. The sticker says 1x7, so we know the 1x is up front, and we saw the 7 on that shifter, the Pro Rush 7-speed shifter, and that controls this Pro Rush derailleur, a derailleur with a clutch. Now I know lots of people that want these as standalone products, not just for the clutch, but also because they come with a 7-speed wide-range freewheel. No 14 to 28 tooth here, 14 to 38 tooth for these 7 speeds. I'm always asked, so here you go, a look at the tire frame spacing, enough room even with these big wheels. And I do like this frame, it seems to be well made, it's 17 inches, it's one size fits all. I don't believe there are any sized frames on the Ardor, and this is a wine color with orange graphics, and if you don't like the graphics, they're stickers and can be peeled off. Cable routing for this frame is external, well external for some of it. There is the internal dropper support. Dropper ready frames, first Schwinn, now Mongoose, evolving right in front of our eyes. Here's a look at the mechanical disc brakes with their 160mm Mongoose M branded rotors. I remember when I first saw this on a Mongoose bike, I liked it back then, I like it now. Frayed cable, compliments of UPS. The seat post clamp is a quick release. The seat post itself is steel and it's an older single clamp style. The saddle, a new design with Mongoose branding, it looks good. Now is the time usually where I throw in geometry specs, but I'm still confirming a few things with Mongoose. And I want to get it right, so I'll follow up on that. But for now, let me just say that this ride, it puts everything where I want it. And for perspective, I'm 5'10" and I have a 31-inch inseam. Shifting out of the box, a slight bit of adjustment required, but the trigger shifter works well, just like every other Pro Rush. Well, actually, there was one that I had that didn't work, but this one works fine. And from shifting, let's talk about the ranges that this is shifting through, because this is a 30-tooth up front and the 14 to 38-tooth at the rear, which means that it's geared more towards ease than speed. Which is fine by me because I can pedal seated up decently steep hills. And the wider tires help with traction too, and that helps with climbing, especially over obstacles like this, where I purposely go over it slow to see how a bike handles. I can muscle right up with these Compass 2.60s. Wide enough for extra traction, but not so wide as to take away from trail fun, meaning I can still lean into turns and take cuts even at a faster pace. Or at least enough for this bike at a faster pace in its factory form. Because smooth, hard-packed trails are where this bike's going to be at home. Anything more than that, it's going to be limited by the fork, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. But first, I want to talk about top-end speed. At speed, I was actually impressed with how this handles for a hardtail at its price. Even with the Pro Rush clutch, it is a bit noisy, but there is definitely reduced chain slap, so that clutch is doing something. As far as this fork, this trail has more roots than you can see. Regular viewers will know that this section gets pretty bumpy on some bikes. This is smoother than I would have guessed, given my experience on other bikes with basically this exact same fork. So these tires are having an impact, or should I say they're absorbing some of the impact. I mean, just look, to use an Alabama phrase, this ain't bad. Now I would keep it to smooth trails if I were to keep this bike bone stock, but this is KevCentral, so you know that's not going to happen. But that aside, and viewing this in its factory form, as the first new generation big box bike from Mongoose, I'm impressed. Because Mongoose has added their own touches, like this shorter stem that sits down low. Or the oversized bars, not much wider, but enough to make a difference. And now that Mongoose has tapered head tubes, there's no turning back. I very much like the new standard. And adding these tires, wide tires all the rage right now, 2.60, the perfect sweet spot for a 27.5 bike. And even though the Compass labeling is pretty much just over-branding, aesthetically it's pleasing to the eye, but on the trail these big box 2.60 tires are usable. To the brakes, always questionable. Mechanical generic disc brakes, but these work. And that's a good segue into some of the small sacrifices to get the key features that we like, but also keep it at a specific price point. And to be fair, they did hit a good balance, because I'll take a clutch and a 1x, and a 7-speed. Even though it's a freewheel, a 14 to 38 tooth freewheel. That's enough range to use on the trail and use well. And I'll take the dropper-ready frame, a frame that's not too shabby. The external cable routing, not a concern for me. It makes it easier for me to put on hydraulic disc brakes that come pre-bled. I like the curves, the contours, and even the color of this frame. Now the trade-offs, the price point items as I call them, like the bolt-on rear wheel. I really wish this had a quick release, but it has a bolt-on. So Mongoose, if you are listening or watching and you're taking notes, jot that down. A quick release for the rear wheel. The fork, along the Achilles heel of big box bikes. Now this definitely isn't the worst fork I've ever ridden, but it's not ready for regular trail rides, or at least hard trail rides. These wide tires do add stress, and that adds flex, relegating the bike to smooth, hard packed trails. And I'm going to skip over that single bolt seat post clamp, because I think since this is dropper ready that's more of a sacrificial part. But it is steel and heavy, like the wide bars. They're steel, so that's a little bit of extra weight. Total out-of-the-box weight being 35.6 pounds. Considering that weight and the steel parts, I think I could easily shed and get this down to my goal weight of under 30 pounds for a hardtail bike. So for me, this bike is a fair balance between price and features, especially the new features that I wanted to see on a Mongoose. And for the money, I was told this is a list price of $348, but tonight I see it on Walmart's website early, by the way, but considerably cheaper, which makes it an even better deal in my opinion. Now, full disclosure, I did not purchase this bike. I was sent this as a review bike from Mongoose, so I've had it for a couple of weeks now. Considering how well this fits me and the potential I see in it, I think Mongoose has a winner in the Ardor X1. Comment below and give me your thoughts on the bike. Thanks for watching KevCentral. Be sure you give this video a thumbs up if you found it informative. If you're new here, I hope you subscribe and that everyone has that notification bell active. Have a great day.